My name is Mike Moloney. I'm a supervising director. I work at Titmouse. I've been a director and board artist for a while now. I've done a variety of jobs. What I want to do today is take you all through a PowerPoint I made, which is going to go over a book I created to sell at CTN about storyboard survival in the modern landscape. It's called TV Boards Survival Manual. So I'll be going over that in the PowerPoint, and I'll also be going over a few other tips. After that, I'll do a demo and a Q&A. Okay, TV Boards, the survival guide. TV Boards. That was the book I wrote. Hello, that's me. You saw a real picture of me. That's a cartoon version. I'm Mike Moloney. You can find me at artofmikemoloney.com, Instagram, Mike J. Moloney. This lecture, it isn't about the basics. I'm not going to talk about the 180 rule. I'm not going to talk about, full shot, wide shot. I'm going to talk about jobs, the current industry, and tips. I'm going to talk about specifics in storyboarding nowadays. I'm going to talk about stuff that'll give you direction for a job. You got to have a lot of focus nowadays, and you got to specialize. And this is going to talk about that. Itinerary. So first I'm going to talk about my story. Then I'm going to talk about your story, your path. Then TV storyboarding. That's really what I'm a specialist in. I've done some work in feature, but I mostly know TV boarding. I'm going to talk about money. Something I think if you're new, you have to think long-term. Money's long-term. Portfolio, what to put in your portfolio, what not to put in, what to look at. Resources, I've gathered a bunch of resources I personally love, and I wanted to share those with you. Those include different portfolios I've seen from friends and people I know that I think are just great. Then I'm going to do a demo, and the demo will be in Storyboard Pro. My storybook, there I am. That was the cheapest Halloween costume I ever made. In and out guy. Okay, I'm 37 years old. I live in LA. I went to LMU, that's Loyola Marymount University. I've been working for about 15 years now in animation. LMU, they have an animation department. It's not a trade school, though. It was a 4-year university. Here's the first drawing I was taught. This is really great. It's the word boy, right? The word boy, and it turns into, oh my gosh, I learned this in preschool. And I love it. It turns into a real boy. How about that? When I learned this, I've thought, wow, drawing is magic. That was me. Not really, but that's how I felt. It was incredible. My talents grew. Sorry, that was my Dragon Ball Z period. That's Vegeta. I think I did that in MS Paint. They grew at a slow pace. I'm not going to lie. I went to LMU and I studied animation, and I couldn't wait to start work. It was LMU. There I am as Lupin the Third in doing cosplay. Again, pretty cheap cosplay. I got that at Salvation Army. Looked good. I struggled out of college. Portfolio had no focus, included random designs, turnarounds, storyboards, figure drawing. I didn't really understand what to focus on. How I broke in. Okay, I worked retail. That was fine. It was good. I took classes at Entertainment Art Academy. They don't exist anymore, but they're out in Pasadena. They're good. And there is a bunch of art schools in LA where they teach you animation, TV animation. I got really lucky, and at the time, Sherm Cohen, who is a supervising director on SpongeBob, he really knows the fundamentals of storyboarding. He helped me get a solid storyboard. And there you can see I was even on the blurb of his Storyboard Secret DVD. So it was pretty cool. I focused on comedic storyboards. Here's some drawings from my first portfolio. It was about an elephant tries to get a peanut, and peanut falls into the snake pit, and then the snake falls in love with the elephant trunk because it looks like another snake. It was cute. It was simple. Through a friend, this portfolio got me my first job. Oh my gosh, at Nickelodeon. That's how I felt. I was so happy I made it. like my career has begun. I made it. Okay, but I was terrible. I was really bad. I was this person. I mean, literally, I was so bad. I was so new and green and stressed. It was really rough. I worked on a show called Making Fiends. I was so green. I was let go early. That wasn't nice. I was devastated. They're very kind to me. They brought me back in for freelance and cleanup and stuff like that, but it was too much too soon. And I learned that your first job, you haven't made it yet. It's really just the beginning. That's a picture from Making Fiends. My second job. So the second job was at Oddbout. 6 months before my next job. Took half a year after Nickelodeon before I got my next job. I got that job through a friend. I remember it very clearly. I was at Chipotle and a friend of a friend joined us and they were working at Oddbot. They said they needed someone and that's how it happened. I worked on a show called Marioku Yummy, which was a preschool show. And it wasn't my dream job, but I built up mileage and I learned and I met more people. And through that, through meeting more people, I got my third job. And that was at Titmouse Inc. At the time, it just had around 30 people working there. It was a very small company. I took a job there and it was rotoscoping. I couldn't find any storyboard work. It was during the recession and it took 4 months. It took a while to find my third job. So you might be seeing a pattern. All these jobs were through a friend and you aren't working steadily right away. I worked hard at Titmouse though, and I built a career there. I've been there for a long time. So I've worked for a bunch of different places now, a bunch of different clients, really. You work long enough and you begin to work for all the major companies at one point or another. So the three main takeaways you can take away from my life. Okay, I found all my jobs through networking. There I am, somewhere in there. Those are my friends. We network together. Three main lessons. Number two, I failed many times, but I kept applying and there'd be dry periods and it took years. It really did. You just got to keep applying. Third one, you want to have a focus. You want to have a really specific focus. Mine was doing comedy storyboarding. That got my foot in the door. It helped me get mileage and helped me get the way in. They saw, oh, this guy wants to do comedy storyboarding. Here's his portfolio. He can do the job. So now your story. Choose your own adventure. The Cave of Time. What you want to do here is you want to think about what path you want. TV, feature, or live action. What is right for you? By the end of the segment, I want you to write down your dream show, movie, studio, like really think about what you want. Movie theater, TV. So talk quickly about live action storyboard. Take it with a grain of salt. I have limited experience doing that. You're usually in the art director guild if you're doing live action. I'm talking about like Marvel movies, stuff like that. You make a lot of money and it's difficult to break into. More rendering and less panels than TV animation or even feature animation from what I've seen. Because if you're rendering like that, it's going to be hard to draw a lot of panels. Feature storyboard. So again, I have limited experience. I've worked on 2 features, Rumble and Wish Dragon. Both of those I worked on at early stages of the film, so you probably won't see any of my work. Drawing style, it's about strong gesture, cinematic. They hire you and your unique storytelling. A lot of the reasons why you get hired for feature is they think you have a unique voice and you can bring it to the table and bring it to their film. I'd argue much more difficult to break into than TV storyboarding. The reason being, there's less jobs in feature. You can think of all the major features that come out every year and you can't even count all the TV shows. There's so many more TV shows. So that means a lot more storyboarding jobs in TV. Something to consider. If you want to do feature, if you want to go down that path, know what you like. If you're like great at comedy, then go for comedy. If you like action, go for action. If you like drama, focus on acting, focus on telling emotional stories, but figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy, and go for that. TV storyboarding, this is what it's about. Tighter drawings, smaller budget, like a layout. You're making a blueprint for the episode. that blueprint is going to be shipped overseas. It's like giving them a guide. There's many jobs, so easier to break into. There's some examples of TV boards. You can see a little bit more technical. We have usually have all the dialogue written out. There's a scene and a panel number to help track it all. TB 204, page 8 of 25. So you want to think about age group. Who do you want to tell stories for? Do you want to tell them for little kids? If you do, that's great. Just embrace it. Puppy Dog Pals, super cute show. If you're really into drawing cute designs, preschool might be for you. 7 and older, then kids, Teen Titans Go, Owl House, Amphibia, Mau Mau. These types of shows are what I grew up on and I love. So I recommend, if you like that, try and go for that kind of show. Inappropriate, younger than 14, that's TV 14. So think primetime shows, Family Guy, Final Space, Disenchantment. This and the final one, TV MA, inappropriate for younger than 17. Both of these have been growing a lot the last 10 years and really within the last year or two. Because of streaming, there's been a huge boost in adult cartoons. So it's pretty hot right now. There's a lot of jobs for this type of work. And BoJack would be an example. So you want to think about genre. Do you want to do action? This is more for TV. Some TV shows are straight action. Not a lot of movies are straight action. Almost everything is comedy action. Most common. You see this in almost every kid show. Comedy, same thing, very common, like SpongeBob is a classic example. Drama, mystery, fantasy, horror, thriller, way less common in the States. Usually there's some comedy or action mixed in. Even if you think of some recent shows like Castlevania, which you could consider maybe fantasy or horror. Love, Death, and Robots, like it'll have some comedy mixed in, or it's usually a little bit, it's not going to be a straight horror movie like, Hellraiser, but the cartoon. It's just very rare to see that. Pipeline. So script driven, this is for TV. Storyboard team works from a script. This is very, very common. Even a lot of features, they'll be working off a script. Usually though, it will have board elements for those features. Board driven, so that's where the storyboard artist is the writer. You have a lot of creative freedom. Feature boards, many shows like Cartoon Network or Disney have this. The thing about board driven is you aren't writing the story. You aren't like, and then they lived happily ever after. The beats and the story and the plot are figured out for you. What you are doing though is you're writing the character, you're finding the character, and you're finding the dialogue, and you're coming up with the gags and the scenes that can tell the story in the most cool way possible. Now these two, you have more creative freedom with board driven. Some people don't want that though. They want script driven. They like working from a script. Writers are writers because they're brilliant at telling stories. It's great if you want to work from that. Medium, good thing to think about. Do you want to do stop motion? There's a lot of work doing that. 2D is most common for TV. 3D animation, that's most common for feature. If you really want to do, 3D camera moves and you really like epic shots where the camera is zooming all over, then maybe think about 3D, because you can't do that in 2D. And it's possible in stop motion, but stop motion, you're mainly aiming the camera in a flat type theater point of view. You aren't doing a lot of reverse shots because you got to build a new set for that. Think about how you like to tell stories visually and follow the path that might work for you. So what do you like? You like that? TV, live action, feature, age group? Do you want to make stuff for babies or kids or adults? Action, comedy, board driven, script driven, 3D, 2D. Think about what you really want. So you know what you want. You're like, I want to do this. Well, you need a physical goal. You can't just have a dream. The job is that goal. Job is the real thing. I get paid real money for doing the real job I have at the real studio I work at. Studios give the job. So you have to know what studio you want to aim for and what studio can make your job a reality. So studios, just Google the animation guide studio list, do a little bit of homework. If you just saw a movie and you're like, oh, I love that movie, look up who made it. Look up the people who made it. Check out the credits. That'll help give you direction. There's a lot of different companies out there now. The landscape's always changing. I mean, 10 years ago, it was all Nickelodeon and Disney and Cartoon Network and TV. and then DreamWorks started, and Amazon, and then Netflix. Like it's always changing. But at the end of the day, like studios are where it's at if you want to make this a long-term job. Your path. So say you love 2D animation like Bob's Burgers, you want to work on a primetime show, you like mature stuff, but maybe not too mature. Focus on Bento Box, Rough Draft, or Titmouse. Look at the studios that make that kind of work. I want 3D animation feature, but I like zany comedy. You don't want to make Frozen 2, you want to make, Cloudy. So look at Sony or Illumination. Look up the studios that will make your dream a reality. And then a word of advice, the path is narrow. So once you go down a path, your network is going to guide your career, the people you know, the friends you make, and you might be doing that job for a while. So it's good to know what you want. This is why it's so important to follow your intuition, follow what you're good at, and enjoy. If all your friends work in feature, you will get more jobs in feature. This is how the nature of networking works. So now I'm going to talk about TV boarding. It's easy, just like that. I'm going to go over standard setup in the industry, the good and the bad, storyboard testing, types of jobs, common mistakes, juicy tips, creative staging tips, and technical staging tips. So there's quite a bit here. Industry, hard word to say, standard setup. So Storyboard Pro, this is for TV. So think of this section for TV. Most common storyboard program in the industry. The reason we use Storyboard Pro is for the production pipeline. It has a lot of export settings that let us send it overseas easier. So try and learn Storyboard Pro. You're going to cast a wider net for jobs. A Wacom Cintiq. I've heard Wacom and then Wacom. I think it's Wacom. I'm not sure. No one knows except for them maybe. It's still the standard. And you want a dual monitor setup. This just gives you a lot more real estate to draw, and you're able to bring up designs on the other screen. This is really what you want. And you need a computer. You can't really use an iPad or something smaller because you need the keyboard for the hotkeys. It will make you work much quicker. Here's a picture of my home setup. So my office is much cooler now. I have frames and artwork on the wall. Anyway, I have a dual monitor with Storyboard Pro. I have a standing desk because I'm old and I like to stand, and a Cintiq arm. You can buy like the Amazon basic one and attach it to my monitor. And it's nice because I have a lot more desk space. You don't need all this. You could just have a Cintiq and a computer and be able to do this work, but it's nice. So the good about TV storyboarding, you get a lot of opportunities. Most shows need one supervisor, 2 to 4 episodic directors, 8 board artists, 2 to 4 revisionists. That's a lot. It's a lot of people. Smells like opportunity. Good pay. It pays well. It really does. Compared to most other animation jobs, you get pretty good money doing boarding. It's a lot of work, but you get good money. Upward mobility. Something to think about. Higher ceiling than designer animation. I was doing animation, and I knew that the ceiling for that was animation director, animation supervisor. If I was doing design, the ceiling for that is art director. If you're doing boarding, then you can move towards supervising director, EP, showrunner. You're dealing with the storytelling, so you're able to get to those higher levels of production and make more money over time. The good, it's difficult to ship pre-production like storyboarding overseas. How do you ship comedy? You can't. It's a cultural thing. What they find funny in Korea is different than what they find funny in America. So it can be difficult to ship. Union protection. This is if you're in LA and you're working for a union shop, you get the 401k, great health plan, pension. These are really great long-term benefits that will help you when you get older and want to retire one day. You can make a career doing this. Creatively fulfilling most of the time. That's how I feel. I have a very fulfilling life. The bad. Okay. Difficult job to master. Well, duh. You need good draftsmanship, storytelling, perspective, time management, acting. The list goes on. You have to know so much. It's tough. It's a lot of work. When you master it, which you never will, then it's still a lot of work. Storyboard artists are quiet because they're always working and thinking. Like, leave me alone. Ah! Yeah. It's how I feel when I begin a storyboard. No one sees your work. No one is going to see your stuff except on the behind the scenes clip on YouTube. No one's going to see it. It stinks. It's gig based. You got to network and hustle for that next job all the time. When the job's done, you're done. You're not like an employee of Bento Box. You're working for Bob's Burgers. Once Bob's Burgers is done for the season, maybe you have to find some other job. Though Bob's Burgers has had like 10 or 11 seasons, so that's a pretty good job. You're pretty secure when you find a show that's lasted for a while. So testing, I'm gonna go over 2 types of tests. Scripted test, you put your stuff out there, people see your portfolio, they like it, they send you a test. This is what to expect for a scripted test, and then what to expect for an outline test or a board-driven test. That's the one where you get an outline and a prompt and you board it. You write the dialogue. So this is what comes with the scripted test most of the time. You get a guide. The guide will tell you what they want to see, how they want you to board it. We're going to do, every show is different. This is a guide for Nico. The animation was done in-house. A lot of times it isn't done that way. For Nico it was. So therefore you can do loose drawings, but clear poses. We're going to do the animation in-house. So, you know, being on model isn't important, but you need good poses and acting. You know, it's a cinematic show. So go for clear compositions, use foreground, background. You really want to pay attention to this, what they ask, follow it. You want to reread the guide. You really want to think about the guide because that's what they want to see. So you get a script. I think 2 pages is good, even a page. You want to, they'll hopefully give you a little talking and a little action, and it won't be overwhelming, hopefully. Character designs, you get a turnaround. You get some action poses, hopefully. These just turnarounds are stiff. That's stiff. You get all the information, but you want action to see how they'd move. If it's Adventure Time or if it's more constrained cartoony, you get a size chart. This is really important because proportions are so important in storyboarding. So pay attention to the sizes. You get background samples to give you a flavor of what the location's like. You get storyboard samples. So this is by Sunjin and David Wu, who both are great board artists and directors. And you can see how clear and good these boards are. They're both different. Both are kind of following what the guide asked for. Storyboard example is gold. You really want to look at that and study it. It's what they're sending out as the gold standard for the show. So study it and try and turn something in like it. So board-driven tests. It's all about the writing. It's really, when I say writing, it's all about the character. The characters are key. A clever plot or gag is secondary to that. You need decent drawing skills. You need to be able to storyboard. But really, when I was working on board driven, really just care about the character. I want to make sure that you have the right tone and voice of the character. You want to be unique. It's kind of like feature. You want to turn in something only you would think of. You get character bios. These are very important. You want to read those because you'll understand what the character is all about. You get an example of an outline test. Board-driven shows are all about the characters. Study how the characters relate to each other. This is something from Mau Mau. Not every board-driven show comes with something like this, but I thought it was terrific. And you could do this on your own if you ever get a board-driven test where you write down the different characters and how they relate to each other. This guy loves him. That person thinks he's an idol. So you want to think about how they act towards each other. The plot's been figured out. It's all about the characters. You should get a map or background, and you should get a storyboard sample as well for outline test, just to show you the level of polish they want. And instead of getting a script, you get a simple premise with the beats and turns laid out. So I covered this because I don't have the rights to share it, but here's an example of how a premise could go. 3 distinct characters want to open a can of beans. Character A tries to open it with their own distinct way. They fail. Character B tries in a unique way. They fail. Character C opens it in a unique way, and they succeed. Character A and B are impressed by character C, and they show it in their own unique way. That's, you know, math. That's like the plot turned into math, and you need to add all the flavor and the fun. So now I'm going to go over some storyboard test pointers. Your first drawings are the stiffest. You'll want to go over them again later. These are all from my booklet, by the way, which you will get a copy of. So here's The first drawing I did for the booklet, here's the 100th drawing. You can just see the difference. I remember drawing this and I did it in 5 seconds. That one I did in like 30 seconds. It's, you know, a real difference. Sorry, just to reiterate, you want to go over your first drawings again later. You'll get them done in half the time and they'll look much better. Breaking the 180 is a big mistake. You want to double check, make sure you don't do it. If I see that in a test, then I know that you don't really have the fundamentals down yet, and it would be hard to hire you to do boarding because I know that, you know, I'd have to fix stuff down the road. You want to double check your proportions. I see this a lot where people stretch stuff out to make it work. They're like, well, I love that drawing or that pose, but the arm doesn't quite make it. Well, I just stretch it a little bit. Don't do that. We'll catch it. I can see that right away. Any director will see that right away and they'll have to fix it, and it just doesn't look good. So here's a big one. I don't think a lot of people talk about it. You want to reduce your shot count. So many tests come in with way too many shots. I'm going to go over this more in detail in a little bit, but something to keep in mind. Try and combine shots. References are super important. I got every job from networking. It's all about someone vouching for you. So you want to make sure that you, if you can, use your reference. If you're like, oh, they're really gonna say, yeah, I'm great, then ask them to do that. It might feel awkward, but do it because you could get a job out of it. If you're established, sometimes you can forego the test and submit examples. So I thought this line is good. A solid personal example is better than a failed test. It's true. If you turn in a test and it isn't right, but you have examples that could convince them to hire you, maybe just go with the examples. And if you don't, it takes time to take a test. So if you can do that, go for it. You want to watch out for abusive tests. Some shows will ask you to do too much. I've done tests where it's like, here, do these 4 pages. And, you know, it takes a few days of work. It's crazy. You want to watch out for that. See if they'll accept rough instead of clean, maybe like a few examples of clean, because they'll be able to tell your ability to clean the board from a few examples. They don't have to see the whole thing clean to know what your ability is. They just need to see a few samples. So I think you could save a lot of time if you're just upfront about that and make it clear to them that, you know, here are my clean examples, the rest are rough. Ask about the panel count as well, because if they tell you, well, you know, do 100, then you won't feel weird if you're turning in 100 panel count tests. You know, you won't be like, oh, this is too little. Well, they're expecting it. So you want to go for quality over quantity. That's a simple one. Quality, I want to see good drawings. I want to see good poses. I don't want to see mushy stuff that isn't thought out. So 4 most common test mistakes I've seen: too many shots, crowded compositions, bad perspective, weak posing. I'm going to go over these in detail in a moment, but watch out for those. Storyboard revisionist. So this is your entry level into the world of TV boarding. How do I break in? Usually you take a test or you have an impressive enough portfolio. You can draw a gesture and solid construction. When you're a revisionist, you're kind of just a hand for the director or board artist. You're cleaning up stuff, you're putting things on model, you're fixing things, you're adding acting from a new audio take. Thick and thin lines do not matter. Texture, not needed. Watch joint thickness here. Contour drawings, bad, don't do it. Graphic images, those can be good, but they lose construction and you can go off the show style if you're too graphic. So it's more of a style thing, something to watch out for, because some people have a personal style that's very graphic and it can affect your test. This is what I want, just clear, has construction, has perspective. It isn't fancy, but it's sound. And I can tell this was done quickly and you'd get the work done quickly because there's a lot of work to do. Here's a little bit more about style. Here's the model. You want to study the model that they give you. You don't want to put in your own personal style. Graphic eyebrows, different proportions. You know, maybe you like drawing Family Guy eyes, or you do the Rick and Morty mouth, or, you know, you really like big anime graphic grins. You want to watch out for all this. Study the model, and follow that. I want to make sure that you can interpret the model correctly. So how do you break in as a revisionist? You want to have an online presence. It makes finding you so much easier. You need a website. You need social media nowadays, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, whatever. It's all good. You get the social media, and that will bring people into your website and look at your stuff. The days of hard copies they're pretty much numbered sometimes. And this has happened for me. I just saw someone's fantastic drawings on Instagram or whatever, and they showcased the elements of a revisionist that I really like. It's like, well, maybe they would be interested in doing revisions, or maybe they want to do boarding, and it isn't clear here. So I'd reach out to them and see if they want to take a test, or they'd be interested. At the end of the day, you're a hand drawing red lines the director draws. So director will give you something like that, and then you have to draw on top of it, put on model, and make it look good. So drawing, you need that to be good. Thumbnailing, honestly, basic. Time management, you need to be good. To go over thumbnailing again, you aren't hired to thumbnail. You shouldn't be thumbnailing if you're a revisionist, because you're being paid to do revisions, not thumbnail. If you are re-thumbnailing a lot of stuff, they could be taking advantage of you. You should be getting paid as a board artist at that point. Think of it that way. Storyboard artist, what does that entail? How do you break in? Usually from revisions. You need to learn the ropes a bit before you bump up to storyboard artist, because you're learning mistakes and solutions and no-nos. There's a lot of those. So you need to build up mileage, and you need to get all in your head. I'd say if you've been doing revisions for a while, be very vocal that you want to do storyboards. The directors, producers, they're all busy. They don't know what you want. You have to be open about what you want and let them know. If you're really fantastic, usually they have it in their head, like, they'd be a good board artist. Once there's an opening, we'll let them in. Yeah, storyboarding is way, way, way more difficult than revisions, in my opinion. I did revisions for a while, and it was the best job I ever had. I go home on time, you're a hero to everyone. Storyboarding, you're there late, you're like racking your brain, you're running into problems, you're redrawing scenes. It's a lot tougher, but you own it. You feel a lot of good creative feelings because you're coming up with the gags and the jokes and the drawings that are going to make people laugh. Even storyboarding, you need to be good at thumbnailing, but you don't have to be great. I've worked with a lot of board artists who they're good board artists. They're not great at thumbnailing, but they get the work done and they do a good job. Usually the director will do a pass. You'll eventually get better at thumbnailing, but you don't have to be brilliant at it. Episodic director, assistant director, they have to be better at thumbing. How do you break in? Come from storyboarding, because you have to understand about shots, the economy of shots, and you don't want to go crazy with the difficult shots to animate. That it has to get made eventually. You want to let the supervising director and line producer know you want to become an episodic director. Usually, again, they have it in their mind, like this person would be a good director. Thumbnailing is a bit more important than drawing, I'd say. If you're a director, it's more about the storytelling. It's more about the economy and the knowing how to visually tell a story. If you're at the point of being a director, though, usually you can draw pretty well. Same thing with boards. I mean, you got to be decent. You review thumbs and you give notes. That's part of the job. You have to know economy, the budget, backgrounds. You have to understand that design equals money. So you're trying to lower shot count. You're trying to combine backgrounds. And you need to work well with others. If you can't do this, don't become a director. Don't make it a goal. If you're like, I don't like working with other people that much, director isn't a great path, because you have to work with a lot of different people. So supervising director, that's what my current job is. How do you break in? Usually after years of experience, and it's networking, it's someone vouched for you, like an EP, a producer, or a showrunner, and they bring you in because they like you and they like your style, and you have the experience to lead a team. What you do as a supervising director, the main difference between the other jobs is you're dealing with post-production and pre-production. You're dealing with post, and storyboarding, you aren't dealing with post. At the end of the day, what supervising directing about, delivering the show on time with the highest level of creative integrity. So you're a bit of a producer as well. You'll see stuff and you're like, man, that's so cool, but we can't make it. There's no time. We're all behind. So you're trying to balance. Quickly talk about post and pre-production. So once you ship it, once it comes back, that's all post. So as a supervisor, I'll be in the take 1, 2, and 3. That's when I'm reviewing animation from overseas. I'll work with the music people and the sound effect people, and I'll listen to what they do, and I'll be like, oh, change this fart noise here. It wasn't clear enough. A clearer fart. You'll make ridiculous requests like that. go to the mix, you'll see it all come together, and you'll be there to review the delivery, and you'll do a final color pass. So you need to do a lot more than just being able to thumbnail. To talk about the 4 common mistakes I see for new people. Too many shots. What does that mean? Commoner mistake is cutting on single shots for every line. What is it? It's the present. Let's open it. So in your mind, you might think, oh, that plays okay. That's kind of funny. We're cutting on each line. It's clear. We have some shot variety. It's not bad. The reason it's bad, and you might not realize, is every time you cut, you're losing the audience a little bit, and it adds work down the pipeline. To go back to this, every one of these is a new layout. Every one of these is a new compositor having to go through and put in the background. Every one of these, we're cutting and we're creatively losing the audience a little bit. And it's a little jarring. It's reminding the audience like, oh yeah, I'm watching a cartoon. You want to group stuff up together. This is one layout, one compositing moment. The dialogue will be delivered a lot quicker. So it'll be faster. Faster is better. On top of that, it's way less work for you. Quality of the episode goes up and your workload goes down. You want to get used to thinking this way. Number 2, cluttered compositions. Common beginner problem. It may look okay. It's actually a little bit cluttered. This guy's ears are way up here. There's not a lot of arm acting room. I'm not really sure what to look at. I know they're kind of all looking at the present, but his eye line is blocked by this guy. You want to open it up. A good way to do that, there's 4 different good ways to do it. There's a million good ways to do it, but these are 4 simple ways, I think. You lower the horizon. Clear silhouette of the present now. All of their eye line, it's really clear what they're looking at. They have a lot of acting space around them. You can lose the horizon altogether. Just punch up a little bit. The point of the shot is these characters looking at the present. Why do I have to see their feet? I don't. Cut it. Cut off their feet. Get rid of those feet. You can cheat out elements. Cheat out the TV, cheat out the couch. TV animation is pretty forgiving. You can move stuff all over the place and people won't really question it. They'll be like, oh, the cartoon character moved it when we're off set here. People buy it. You can go wider. Now all of a sudden there's a lot more room for the cat up here and the dog, and they can do a bit more acting. You can combine a few of these, do a low horizon, cheat out these elements, and you have a really great stage to work with. Here's another example. We have 2 characters talking. We're just really way too close. This might work if, say, the dog is feeling in the story, cornered. But most of the time that's not going to be the case. And you just want to make it wider. You want to give them room to act. You can use the rule of thirds to give more room to act. That's where you just plop down this thing and you put the thing you want the people to look at in these corners. Simple. I shrunk these guys down by 10%, and now it's a lot clearer. You can bring people in, they're kind of crowding the corners, the sides of the screen. There's a lot of weird dead space here. Bring them in, use the rule of thirds. Framing tangents, again, like crowding the corners of the screen. Tangents are bad. You don't want tangents because my eye looks there instead of there. And then I'm looking there and I'm like, oh yeah, the frame. Oh yeah, I'm watching the TV show. What's the emotion again? Like, what's the story about? You get distracted by the fact you're watching the TV show. It takes people out. You want to avoid tangents. Easy way to do it is just shrink it down 10% or punch in 10 to 20%. You want to frame stuff so you're forcing the viewer to look at what you want them to look at. One good thing to do, I think, before you turn in a test, just go through and shrink everything 10%. See how that looks, if it feels better. Perspective. Okay, perspective. This is a tough one. The grid, you always want to put a grid in TV animation. Feature, it can be different because they're more cinematic. You have an amazing layout team that's going to figure out the perspective, all that. In TV, you want to put in the grid. You want to use a light gray. You don't want to use opacity because opacity makes a heavier file size. Without the grid, it can be difficult to tell the shot type. So if I'm breaking this down later with the art director in the design breakdown, and we have a shot like this, I don't know if we should put, and the art director doesn't know if we should put sky here, background, landscape, what's going here. That's your job as a storyboard artist to tell me. So if you're not putting a grid or not indicating the angle of the camera, you're not doing your job and that's really annoying. So you can quickly see how powerful the grid is. Upshot, isometric downshot, high horizon, low horizon, 2D animation. This character kind of fits in all these different angles. It's weird what you can get away with. So put in the grid to make it really clear. You want to keep the grid consistent. You don't want perspective to be ambiguous. You don't want to free draw stuff and be like, what to do? Yeah, you get it, it's ground. No, use straight lines, hold down shift, draw across, and it'll just be clear. It'll be more solid. You don't need perfect perspective for the background. You don't need to draw the house in beautiful 2-point perspective. It takes too much time. I don't want you focusing on that. I want you telling the story. What's more important is you want to make sure the characters match perspective. So if it's a big upshot, make sure you can draw these characters at different angles that match the perspective. That's more important, that they feel like they're sitting solidly on a stage. Another thing about perspective you got to watch out for, people will draw characters too low in the frame. If you put your hand over the screen and you look at this, you might be like, yeah, that's okay. You draw it out and you realize, oh, this guy's in a hole. So I always go wider and I always draw out the grid and I just make sure it's good. You want to draw outside of the frame. It can happen the other way too, where the character's too high. So be aware of that. Bad posing. This one is huge. Having good posing will get you that revisionist job, I think, because that's the number one thing you're going to be doing as a revisionist is posing. So it's easy to draw the characters on model based on the turnaround, but it's kind of stiff. You know, hands on the hips, one hand out. Kind of boring. It's acceptable, but boring. You want to try and add body language that shows the emotion, clarity of the acting. It's just more interesting. Personally, I really like it when one person's body language affects another, because it just creates for a really clear silhouette and clear storytelling, something to think about. If you're finding your drawings are too stiff, it's probably because they're at 90-degree angles like this. You want to start rotating things. You want to put in diagonals. Diagonals create energy. And it's because if you know a bit about design, seeing something like this feels like gravity is going to be affecting it and they're going to fall. We just have this in the back of our reptile brains that, you know, gravity is going to affect stuff. So when you put things in diagonals, it gives it energy. It makes it feel like it's going to fall or move or flow. Flip the arc. This one's great. Try and look this up. I think Glenn Keane did a great talk at CalArts a few years ago about the arc. And I know a lot of classic animators have talked about it. You try and put this in your poses. Just try and put it and it will help break the silhouette. It's really great for action, acting, for everything. It makes for really clear acting. And I know it's going to animate well overseas because I'm forcing those overseas animators to go from that pose to that pose. I know there's going to be energy and it's going to pop. It's going to animate much better. You can see it in the silhouette, you know, left to the right. Like it's just clear in the acting. Like that's a pleading type pose. That's like a, oh my gosh, you don't even have to see that. You can see it in the acting. It's a clear contrast of emotions. You want to try for the best silhouette. Okay, don't do this kind of thing. I can't tell what they're holding. That's better. That's acceptable, but this is the best. If you need to, have them flip the prop in their hand. But you always want to try and go for the best silhouette. It just makes for the quickest read. Quick reads are clear, and that's just better storytelling. Rule of silhouette, again, framing, too tight here. What are they holding? Oh, they're holding a bone. It's so much clearer when you go wider. So consider the frame as well as breaking in, cutting into tangents. This is more of a pet peeve of mine, but I'm sure a lot of directors bump into this. Are they looking at each other or the spoon? Their eye line is blocked. You want to keep the eye line open because eye line is so good for telling story and telling the audience what to look at. Right now, I guess I'm saying look at the spoon, but I'd also be confused, like, are they looking at each other? Better if you lower it, makes it clear, oh, they're looking at each other all along. If you want them to look at the spoon, have the spoon be way up here, and they both could be looking up. You want to watch the eye line. You don't want to block it. This one's kind of weird, but it's true. You want to limit back view acting. Characters, when they're facing away, we don't see their emotion. I don't know if they're sad. Maybe they're really happy, actually. Who knows? Oh, no, they're sad because he turned his head. So a lot of times you want to have them facing away and then turn towards camera so we can see that emotion. Sometimes in feature, they'll have the character facing away the entire time. And that's great because they have world-class, amazing animators who can convey that emotion correctly. In TV, we don't have that. We have good animators. They aren't going to be able to carry a scene from a back view. It's just much more difficult to do, especially in 2D. Have them turn towards the camera. Same can be applied to profile. You want to limit profile acting. Put in 3/4. There's something about profile, it's just really hard to understand the emotion of a character. But in 3/4, it's super clear. You're seeing both eyes. I think, some expressions require both eyes to tell, both eyebrows. So you want to see 3/4, it's better. You can have a little bit profile, maybe have them turn to 3/4. And here's a hilarious drawing to break up the lecture. I don't know who painted it. I hope it isn't some terrible serial killer or something. And I'm like, oh, look at this. No, it's just a funny painting. I don't know. Anyway, back to the lecture. Okay, here's some juicy tips with the creepy GIF, I guess. I think that's Jack Black. Anyway, foreshortening. So these are just kind of fun tips I've found over the years. So some people turn in boards and they'll have, look at this cool drawing I did with foreshortening. It can look great, but if you're too wide, it doesn't make sense. Foreshortening only works when the character is close to the camera. That's what creates the foreshortening. So you don't want to have foreshortening when it's really wide. Make sure that they're close to the camera. It should look like that if you're thinking about how it's shot. And you can have the frame, cut into it a bit. That means, this is going past the lens. That helps sell it. One other thing is you want to add overlap. The drawing below, so I didn't add any overlap. It feels a little bit more flat. If I go back, look at that. I overlapped his hand with the handle. You don't really see the bicep. It's more, things are overlapping each other. So it feels more foreshortened, stronger. Shape design background. So there's a lot of different ways to approach backgrounds. I'm going to talk about that in the demo. If you're on a show that requires some tone, because maybe it's more cinematic, or even if you're on a show and you're just doing gray backgrounds, it's easy to add too much detail. You're like, oh, I want to sell this background. I'm going to add all the little dilly-doos everywhere. Don't do that. Don't do that. It takes a lot of time and it actually hurts your storyboarding because it hurts your storyboarding because I'm looking at that and I'm not looking at the characters or whoever walking along. What you want to do is think in shapes, think in tones. You want to block out big shapes that are interesting and have an interesting stage for the characters to walk on, but you don't want a lot of detail. You just want to indicate the planes and the shapes that we're seeing in the background. Let the designers do their job. They are better than you at it. That's why I cannot do a background like the way the designers do it. No way. They're going to do a better job every time. So let them do it. You just need to think of the shapes in the stage. They'd take that and make it way better. And I didn't spend, 5 extra minutes drawing all the cobblestones and stuff. It can be helpful too if you're doing tone, stuff like this, to add a color fill behind the characters to make them pop. That's kind of obvious, but something to consider. You want it to be the clearest and quickest read possible. The black bar, this is kind of you see it all the time in anime, and I love this shot because anime and Japanese animation, they're so brilliant at economy. TV is all about economy. They are the best at it. So the idea behind the black bar is the camera is in the ground and the camera lens is up against the ground. So no light is hitting the ground here. That's why it's black. It's great for cheating registration. I could have characters walking forward here and they're overlapped by this black bar. So their feet don't have to register to the ground clearly. They can slide a bit. So I can focus on the animation of them walking and not the animation of them tracking on the ground. You want to use cheats like this. Other ways it's helpful, and other ways you can use it. You can use grass. You can use tall grass or whatever to hide the registration. It's great for showing scale. It's great for having characters or props or things coming towards the screen because we can cheat that registration, makes it easier to animate. You can put important things in the foreground because the camera is low. You can really make that dog food big. You can get the same kind of composition and idea from a low angle shot as well, where the camera's a little bit higher and we're seeing the asphalt or the ground or whatever like this, and it has to overlap the character's feet. You don't want that dog standing on top of this. You want them behind it all. And that will allow us to cheat the registration. You can put a few big pebbles in the foreground, give scale with smaller pebbles in the distance. Really powerful shot. Thumbnails, not thumbnails. So if you're early in your project, this is okay for early pitch. That's fine. I get it. I don't want to see that because you spent all your time making a beautifully rendered thumbnail that might not be the right shot at all. You want to think about your shots. So one thing you can do if you have a real specific design in mind, you can show the clean one at the start of your pitch. You're like, here's my monster. He's a conehead dragon. And the director, whoever, like, they'll be able to fill in the blanks here. They'll get what they're seeing. And you just saved yourself a lot of time. First thumbnail pass, this is a personal preference. A lot of people do their thumbnailing on the computer. I like using paper. This ensures you're not going to fall in love with your thumbnail drawings. Sometimes I'll draw something when I'm thumbnailing on the computer. I'm like, this is such a good drawing. How did I do it? I got to save it. And then it might not be the right shot. So draw it on paper. You won't fall in love with your drawings. You can, on top of that, you can see the sequence as a whole. You can quickly cross out stuff. You can draw new stuff. It's just quick. It's all about creativity here. You and the paper and the idea. When you have the computer on, your brain is switching from technical to creative back and forth. You're hitting hotkeys, you're auto-saving, you're losing stuff. You deleted that drawing you love. You're going back and forth. It hurts your creative flow. At least it hurts it for me. So something to consider. Draw little for thumbs. And I'm talking about draw physically smaller. When you draw smaller, you're reducing that line mileage. Line mileage is the time it takes for you to physically move your pencil across the paper. This, at this size, it took me 85 seconds to draw. I know, slow. This took 45 seconds. This took 10 seconds. If my math is correct, which it probably isn't, 50 10-second drawings is 8 minutes, 30 seconds. 50 85-second drawings is 1 hour, 11 minutes. So you can see the difference. I mean, that's a huge difference in time. It's almost an hour, more than an hour longer if I'm drawing at that size compared to that. And I can be doing the same storytelling. These are thumbs, so you're going to redraw them again later. Draw small. You want to practice drawing star people, little figures which show the gesture. You want to think about body acting. You want to think about how to show that quickly. Just get good at this kind of thing, and that can help your shorthand for thumbing. Creative staging tips. Stay creative. Okay, the reveal. I love the reveal. It's one of my favorite shots. It's a fun way to introduce new information. When you're a director and you're reading a script, usually you're just like, okay, here's a new beat, here's a new beat, new information. Beats are information, new information, new information. How do I introduce new information in a fun way? And the best way to do it is the reveal. Props can reveal, brings that down. Hey, this is my face. Characters can reveal. You can turn to introduce a new character. I see this in feature all the time. Camera can reveal. You know, if you were to put your hands up to the screen and pan left and right over this, it would be funny. Effects can reveal smoke or fire explosion. You know, I think Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII in the fire, you know, turning. Light can reveal. So characters stepping out of the shadows into the light. Really, really think about the reveal. It's every scene, almost every scene has a reveal. 90% of them are camera reveals, where it's, you know, we're on the monster blood on the ground, and then we pan up and see the expression, the worried expression of a character's face. Like, oh, we got monsters. We're introducing blood, and then we're introducing, you know, the guy and his worried expression. The reveal helps force the audience to look at what you want them to look at. Use verticality. So we're all around the same kind of height as humans. We walk around, we talk to each other, and we're viewing from the same height. It can be kind of boring, though, when we stage that in a show. As characters are talking back and forth. What you want to do, try and give characters different height. Use verticality. And this will create more interesting shots. It will force you to do more interesting shots. It can show power dynamics way more clearly. In every conversation, most of the time, there's some kind of power dynamic. Character wants something or is pushing for something. You can show that more clearly in the staging if you use verticality. Try and use it. Maybe go back to a boring sequence you have, use some verticality, and watch it get really interesting. Shot variety. I remember when I learned this, and my head exploded. This is such a simple trick, and it's so effective. So the horizon line is in the same spot in all these shots. It creates a boring sequence. If you're watching this on TV, the background would feel like it's jump cutting. It would be boring. What you want to do, same exact character poses, by the way. I just moved the horizon line. There it is. Here the horizon line is way below frame. It's a big upshot. Here the horizon line is way above frame. It's a downshot. This creates shot variety, and it'll just make your stuff look better. It'll play better. Too many camera moves. Camera can be jarring if it's overused. Try and keep it simple. So sometimes, especially in action shots, people will have like 5 or 6 different camera moves. You usually don't need that. You could probably simplify it. It could look great. The reason we want it simpler is it's easier to pull off in the production of the animation. The overseas team can figure out, 2 camera moves way easier than 5 or even 3. Creatively, it can be very jarring too. If we push in and then out, it feels like a yo-yo. The audience is thinking about the camera and not the characters. You want the character to always try and guide the viewer to look at what you want them to look at. Trucking in and then cutting wide is a big no-no, super jarring. Watch out for that. It will feel jumpy. Avoid adjusting the right and left and right again. It's kind of a yo-yo thing. Again, there's always an exception to every rule. Comedy, it's a funny camera move because it's goofy. It could be really funny in comedy if 2 characters are talking, pan to the right, pan to the left, and there's a monster there instead, which is a fun camera reveal. That could be a really funny thing in comedy. So technical staging tips. So technical, this is stuff, these are like key core concepts in storyboarding, TV storyboarding. You should get to know. If you're on the job, you're going to learn about them real quick, hopefully. Key shot is important for establishing a location, and it helps limit backgrounds. You see this in classic cartoons all the time. And it's just about economy. You're saving money on backgrounds. Usually it's a big establishing shot of a location. We have some foreground elements. The foreground elements are great because they allow you to punch in and you have a new composition without the foreground elements. But we've only drawn one background. How can this be? One background is 2 different shots. It's great. You get a lot of money for limited backgrounds this way. Background designers, and here's what people don't understand, even I think a lot of board artists don't know this. Background designers, art directors, they'll draw out this key background. Maybe later in the episode we have the jail scene and we have the lab scene. You want to draw out that key background because then when you send that overseas, they'll have all the assets they need for the lab scene and the jail scene. You're only doing one background. It's a good way to approach boarding is thinking about this and approaching a scene with this in mind. Just to be clear, this is more like, I think this is more on the job stuff. If you're testing and you want to impress people, don't feel like you need to be, well, he said only use one background. Don't worry about that. This is more on the job. 3-wall setup, another great way to approach TV boarding. It's super economic. So 3-wall setup, that means we're looking at 3 walls, 1, 2, 3. You want to think about it like a stage or a shoebox. It's like a stop motion animation where we're looking into the shoebox and we're seeing the stage. The reason it's so good is because we aren't seeing the reverse. So we're saving a background. If you cut to the wall over here, then that's one more background we have to do. But if we're seeing 3 walls, we can get a lot out of that background. Okay, make a map. They always told me, make a map, but I didn't really understand what that meant and what the real benefits of a map can be. When you're making a new location, a good word of advice, and this isn't always true, say if we're in like a temple or something, maybe you'd want it to be symmetrical because that would make sense for a temple. But say we're fighting out in a courtyard, have this area be arch with sides, here houses, here trees with houses, here brick wall. This will let me in the design breakdown and the art director clearly know where the camera is aimed. Arch, you know, no trees, brick wall. It really helps if you have a few distinct elements to know where we're pointing at. This one is so important. I mean, I should put this up with the common mistakes, really. You want to break up the scene. The audience, if I looked at this and I was an animator, I'd be like, no, why would you do this? Because there's so much action going on. I don't know what to look at as an audience. It's hard to animate, not clear. What you want to do, you want to break up the action. Two solutions to this: pan or adjust. Say, you know, we're on Bear here, he's fighting, they're shooting, and then a missile comes in and we pan with the missile. Sorry, as we pan, we lose Bear and the Uzi guy, and then we're over here on these two. You can also cut. So his eye line looks over, he tracks the missile, and then we cut to a new location, the missile comes in. You want to use the camera, you want to cut, you want to break it up. Cutting in the camera are the best way. Center line, this one's real simple. Once you establish where the characters are and they're talking to each other, just keep the character who's established on the left, keep them a little left of center, keep the character on the right, a little right of center. This allows the viewer to quickly track. It's just good manners, good manners in TV boarding. It doesn't really matter as much, but here's my view in theory about entering an episode. You don't want to begin on characters right away. It's a little jarring. On top of that, you have the titles, you have credits, you have all this stuff going on top of the screen. So that will cover it up. And we might lose some character acting or some moment if you start too soon. So most cartoons, and I try and start them this way, is you know, pan down from the sun, we're on the establishing shot, or we're on something that doesn't really matter. So we can put the title of the episode. Even if we aren't putting the title down, I think this is a really nice way to enter an episode. It's a little more poetic. You're telling the audience, okay, get your brain ready. You're going to watch a cartoon. If you start on a shot like this, it can be jarring. This is jarring. Interesting. This one's so basic, but it's powerful. This guy walks in from the left. They say hi to each other. It looks fine. You know, I've seen this a lot in shows. It's okay, but it could be better. The way to make it better is you have the character enter from where the other character is not looking, and that will force this character to turn. He'll change the silhouette, and we'll have a clear idea that they're talking just based on silhouette. On top of that, to go back, if he's looking to the left, why didn't he see that character come in? Doesn't make a lot of logical sense. You want to have the character come in from behind. It's a little bit clear. It makes more logic. How to remove dead space. So this area here is open. Something's coming in. As an audience, you're like, someone's coming in over there. Yep, there he is. What you want to do is frame a little bit tighter and then add a little camera adjust. That can solve that problem. Something to consider. You don't want to telegraph where characters are going to enter. Okay, so that's it for TV board tips. Now I'm going to talk about money. I'm going to try and go quicker. Tough to talk about because information is vague. I went to write down about money. I'm like, I don't know what people make. I'm not sure what they make on different shows. Who knows? I don't know them. But what I can tell you is the union enforces minimums for union shows. So you want to look up animation union wage to find out this info. And I got to be honest, looking it up, it's confusing. They have like Xerox processor and all these different titles. Most storyboarding is considered production board, I believe, for the union wage. But it's confusing. And now with new media, there's even more confusing titles being put out. So Google it, at least get familiar with it, but it's not super clear. Yeah, many of the jobs are archaic. So this is what I've heard through the grapevine. Take it with a grain of salt. Don't be like, this is what he said, and it's got to be true. I could be off base with some of these estimates. Feature animation, from what I've heard, $3K to $5K a week. So that's really good money. You can live a good life doing that and doing something you really enjoy. Lower levels might be $2,000 to $2,500 a week. It could be even lower. If you're working on a non-union shop, anything goes. you could be getting paid $1,500 a week for a feature. New media, got to watch out for new media shows. This is like DreamWorks TV. They can kind of lowball you. It can be as low as 1,500, even lower. So watch out for that. TV primetime, they pay well. I'm talking about like Family Guy and stuff like that. And primetime pays well because a lot of people view it. You're getting millions of people watching it. So it pays well. Higher levels, you can make really good money, like 4,000 to 5,000 a week. TV, action, comedy, this is kind of what I work in and what I enjoy. On average, for boarding, you get 1,800 to 2,500, pays pretty good. Preschool, same thing. I imagine. I haven't done preschool in a union, but because of the union minimums, you can expect this amount of pay. And again, just want to say, take this all with a grain of salt. This is what I've heard through the grapevine and what I think people are making now. If I'm way off, please inform me because I want to know more. Okay, to tell you what I've made, because this I do know. Nickelodeon, 2006, 2007, was making $14.50 a week. This is for storyboarding. Oddbot, yeah, I made less money. They're non-union. I made $1,100 a week doing storyboard animatic. Sometimes that happens. The whole world of animation at that time was very different. A lot less shows, a lot less opportunity. Tim Mouse, yeah, I went even lower. That's not good. Hello, recession. That's right. I made $900 a week. I couldn't find a job storyboarding. I was doing rotoscoping. And that's not a job you get paid very well for. It's kind of grunt work. Unfortunately, I was really good at rotoscoping. Don't be good at what you hate. Word of advice. So Tim Mouse, I started doing Flash animation and started getting paid more to the point where I was making $14.50 a week doing Flash animation. But I knew that animation has that cap. The most I could get would be $1,600 or something from becoming an animation supervisor. Maybe it's different now, but I was like, I want to do boards. I know the cap is higher. So I started boarding for union. I was making $1,900 a week. And then I quickly became a director because they knew me well and I proved myself pretty quickly. So I made $2,100 a week as a junior director. 15, 16, I was making $2,400 a week, supervised directing. Again, like as a new supervisor, so I was making a low amount. I know directors and board artists who are making more than me, and that stinks, but that's what it is. And that's the trouble with sharing info of what you make, because some people are going to look at this and be like, you made so much money. And then other people are going to look at this and be like, you got ripped off. Like, you're a schmuck. That's why people don't want to share. Cartoon Network, I went back there for writing. I made $1,900 a week doing writing. You make less writing, I found out. I'm sure if you're established, I was a new writer. If you're established, you're probably making more, but something to consider. Now I went back to Titmouse for Mau for a Cartoon Network production original. I was making $2,700 a week. Again, that's really low for supervised directing. If you compare it to prime time, they're probably making twice as much as me on really huge shows. So that's the way it is. However, I love my job. It's board driven. It's very creative. So that's what I want to do. If I wanted to make a lot of money, I wouldn't be doing animation probably. I'd be doing, I don't know, be an engineer, right? Like that's super easy to just jump into. So take all that with the grain of salt. Everyone's path is different. Everyone's ability at different levels are different. That's what I made in my career. Get informed. Twitter has animation paid me. Check it out. People are posting what they made. It's powerful. You can ask people, but be polite. It can be rude to ask. Some people, they might be cagey about it. Negotiate. You always want to negotiate. You might think, I don't want to, but do it. Like they're kind of expecting it. And they'll try and meet you halfway. I'll never forget a friend who was working for Nickelodeon, and he asked, this was years and years ago, and he was like, I asked for $2,400 a week for storyboarding. I was like, oh my gosh, how could you do that? And he's like, well, they're Viacom. Like they make billions of dollars. Why not? What are they going to say? And they didn't give him $2,400. They gave him $2,300, which is still way more than what I expected anyone would pay him for boarding at that time. So, they aren't going to be like, you asked for too much, we don't want to work with you now. No, they'll be like, okay, here's a new offer. So when you start getting in there, negotiate. I kind of went over this earlier, just to reiterate, benefits of a gig economy, which is what we're doing. It's a trade. We're jumping from show to show. You can get pay raises quicker. A lot of people don't realize this, but because you're negotiating for the next job, you can quickly get pay raises. If you're working at the same place, which is actually a trap I kind of fell into, I love it there, but I'm not able to negotiate as much because I'm kind of at the same place. If you're going from Disney to Netflix to you negotiate. A variety of working challenges. I love that. I always love being on a new thing. And feature, you're on the show, you're on the movie for 2.5 years or something. On TV, you're like jumping around, you're always getting challenged, you have weird episodes. Like I like that. You can level up faster as an artist. If you're always jumping around, you're being challenged in new ways. Disadvantages of the gig. Okay, jobs can be sparse at times. You saw my work history. I had, half a year where I couldn't find work and I was living off savings, or the few months here where I couldn't find it. Can be tough in the beginning, especially. You aren't guaranteed work. Right now we're in a boom. 10 years from now, who knows? I might be fighting one of you for a job. Who knows what the future will be. So you have that constant pressure. It can be tricky leaving a job as well. You don't want to burn bridges. You want to be upfront with your producer. You don't want to be like, hey, I'm leaving this Friday, surprise. They will hate you forever. And remember that. So don't do that. Be upfront. Leaving a job, timing-wise, can be tricky, but people understand that's part of the world and the landscape. So they're expecting it. Board portfolio. To go over portfolios, which you must have in a portfolio, you need at least a website and some social media, of course. Website's nice to show the body of the work, but you use social media to bring people in. You can be perfect. You can be the best board artist in the world, but if no one knows about you, no one can hire you. So, Instagram, Twitter, websites like CarbonMate or Wix or whatever, like that's all good. Make it easy to find your work. Layout. Have a contact sheet, resume somewhere. There's been people who I'm like, who are they? Oh yeah, they're pretty good. How do I find them again? I'm like doing Google searches in my email. Like, what was their email? Was it Vivian with 2 eyes? I don't know. And then you can't find them anywhere online. Like, they don't have their contact information up. They're out of a job from that simple thing. For storyboarding, I recommend 3 examples. We're talking 100 to 200 to 250 panels. You want to be short, not too long, because I don't have time to look at a really long thing. You want to display them in a one-click image. I like Speaker Deck. My own stuff is used LinkedIn SlideShare, and then I found Speaker Deck. I'm like, oh, it's better because there's no lag. You just click and it goes. It's really good. Google Slides works. You want to set it up in one of those things. There's probably a million more, but I don't know what they are. Layout, don't overwhelm people. They have, they're fitting this in the middle of their workday. Like, I have a bunch of meetings, I have a bunch of work to do. I'll check out your stuff, but I don't have 5 minutes to watch your stuff. I'm going to look at it in like 45 seconds. Usually within 10 seconds, I'll know. So the single panel click through is nice because it lets me control the speed of which I'm going through it. That's why I prefer that to animatic. I'd recommend for some directors out there having 3x4 board panels laid out underneath the single panel click. I like that because you can see the flow of shots, and some people think better that way. They like seeing your shot choices laid out like that. I like single panel because the way animatics are built nowadays, it's like so posed out. It's nice to see that you have that ability in your brain. Don't make animatics. Just to reiterate, you can, if you have it already, if you're maybe doing a musical sequence and you're using some existing sound, okay, that's okay. But maybe try and display it in a single panel as well. Animatics, they require so much of your time. Having a good vocal performance can make or break it. It can make it really boring. you're not an editor most of the time, so your pacing might be really slow. I think a lot of board artists, you do that amazing drawing and you want it to be up there for a while. That might not be right for the viewer. Consider all that stuff. On top of that, no one has time to watch a 5-minute animatic, even if you spent months on it and you put your heart into it. I just don't have time. You want to put your best stuff first. They will review your first sample first. Well, duh, yeah. Make it the first one they see. Make your good stuff the first stuff they see. That's simple. Just put it at the top of the page. Oh, when making a portfolio, check out credits. So I wanted to work on a certain type of show. I'd look up that show and check out the credits and look up those artists online. Oh, I love this GIF. I'm just going to click. Anyway, yeah, that's what you got to do. That right there. You want to work on Rick and Morty? I've seen a ton of amazing Rick and Morty boards up online. Check out what they want and try and emulate that. It gives you a great barometer to know where you're at and what's expected. What do I board? Okay, so making a board sample, this is tough. This is like a big question I get a lot. The best for me is when you work on your own simple idea with a simple conflict. I suggest think of a physical dilemma. Physical makes it visual. So as I was writing this, I just wrote down 3-4 stupid things, dog detective chasing a cat burglar, stolen jewel, 2 squirrels fighting over a woodpecker won't let a camper sleep, 3 friends argue in the woods and are attacked by a monster. Just all these have some kind of physical thing. You can have a chase. You want some action. You want it to be visual because as a board artist, you're a visual storyteller. You want to have a little action, and I think you want to have a little conversation. You want to make sure you can show dialogue that can be compelling to watch because 80% of cartoons will have characters talking to each other, and I want to know that you can do acting and make it fun to watch. And I suggest doing a little bit of action and a little bit of comedy and a little bit of talking because that'll just really cast a wide net for you. That's what most shows are. You want to get a job, cast a wide net. If you want to only work on Castlevania, then you got to make a storyboard that kind of fits that mold, but that might not work well if you apply for SpongeBob. You got to figure out what you want, and action comedy is the widest net. Again, like dialogue, keep it interesting. You want to keep it short. I don't have time to look at your epic. It can be great, but I just don't have the time. Once you finish it as well, you're going to be better. You should want to make another. So if you keep it short, you're going to get way more mileage, gain to be a better board artist. It doesn't need to be a brilliant story. We're not hiring you to be a writer, hiring you to be a visual storyteller. So it just needs to be told brilliantly. Not a brilliant story. You just need to tell it really well. That's what we're hiring you for. If you can make a character open a bean jar compelling, then you're doing your job. That's kind of a boring thing, but what do I board? Continued. That's right, I'm not done yet. I don't want to make up a story. I don't care. Well, okay, fine. You don't want to make up a story. Here's some suggestions. You can find scripts online. This, which is included in the resources. It has a bunch of different scripts you can work from. So if you can get a test to practice on, you can apply for a job. Say you're too green, but you'd love to test. If you get some character turnarounds, use those and storyboard them in a musical number. I want to see Aang from Avatar sing Defying Gravity. That sounds fun. And you get a board example out of it. All the music, the idea of what the pacing should be is done. You don't have to make all that. That's not your job, but you can get a good example that way. And you're just showing that you can draw stuff on model. What do I board for a feature? So I don't have as much experience in this. So take all of this advice with a grain of salt, but I have looked at a lot of feature and TV boards. I kind of can see the difference between the two. And I've taken classes in feature as well. So I have an idea. You want to make up your own story for feature and you want to focus on characters. Characters are story. You want to create a simple conflict. A few years ago, I heard the Disney training example was you have a new neighbor. There might be more to that, but cool, you have a new neighbor, you focus on the 2 characters, they're probably not going to get along, have some conflict, and you tell that story. Or the Pixar 2 bandits rob a train, and you want to make the characters distinct, and they rob a train, and you want to maintain the direction the train is going and make it cinematic. You could storyboard a scene inspired from your life. I recommend that because your life, they're hiring you based on you as a person, and being inspired from your own life, like no one else can tell that story. So it's a good way, good place to draw from. Feature board elements, these are just ways they tell story that I've seen, like patterns I've seen. Should be cinematic, of course. That means tone boards most of the time, because boards give you lighting information. The oneer, okay, that's a long tracking shot of a character. That's when, a character walks through a room into another room, you follow the waiter through all the diners, and then they put the tray down at the table. That's a oneer. We're following this guy, and you're able to do that in 3D and in feature, because they have the budget and the time to do a oneer. Try and put that in your board. Show off 3D camera moves. Background can animate. Camera can zoom in, fly around the background. So go all out. A lot of the stuff I talked about earlier, that's all 2D TV animation. We have a restricted budget. Can't do 3D camera moves. No way. Fun reveals. What I talked about the reveal section, study that. Your mind will be blown away when you watch a feature again and keep reveals in your mind. Like, oh, there's a reveal, another. They love having characters reveal other characters. It happens all the time. It'll be like a character and we'll slide over and rack focus to the character in the background. Keep that in mind. I forgot to add this to the resource list, but it's great. Khan Academy, Art of Storytelling. They have some great exercises, and they really talk about feature boards and what's expected. Resources. So these guys animate. There we go. I think they're going to email out a resource list. I supplied a list PDF. I'm going to review what they are real quickly because it's kind of a wall of text. What's in it? List of organizations like CTN that I think are great for building up a network. A lot of them are local in LA. It's just kind of the way the world is. A lot of this is all LA based. A lot of my information is all LA based. Different classes you can take. Again, great for building a network. You want to build a network, and taking classes you learn too. So bonus. Online resources. Okay, the online world is insane now. There's so many good artists, and these are just a few of the tips and things I've found where I'm like, this, I wish I had this as a student. It's amazing. Some writing resources, some feature storyboard artist portfolios I found online that I like, and some TV storyboard artist portfolios I found online that I like. A lot of these people are pretty high level. Most of the TV people are directors now, which, isn't surprising when you look at their portfolio, but it's laid out pretty clearly, a lot of these, and they're good. So, copy that kind of layout. Think about how clear their presentation is and emulate it. Union wage pay, helpful YouTube channels. There's, I think, 2 on there, but there's so many, but again, YouTube, great resource. And the display websites like Speaker Deck and stuff. And just as a side note, I'm going to be donating 50% of what I make from this lecture to the Equal Justice Initiative. It's a organization. It's dedicated to reforming mass incarceration and excessive punishment. So check them out online if you're interested. I think they're a great organization. Now a demo, followed by a Q&A, which I'll probably have 5 minutes for. So I'm going to show you some Storyboard Pro tricks real quick. I'm going to show you how I do a shot in Storyboard Pro quickly and posed out. I kind of have it prepared because I knew it would take too long. Otherwise, Storyboard Pro, there it is. Thank you for watching the PowerPoint. And I'm going to switch screen share now to my Cintiq. So this is how I like to approach perspective a lot of the time. I like to just have some grids ready to grow. Not grow, but go. I like this type of grid. It's just a perfectly straight type grid. Usually what I do is I'll have how I make it real quickly. I'll just, draw a few lines. Then I've, have a lot of shortcuts. I'll use the Control key to copy it, and then I'll move it over, turn it, then voila, I have a grid. I'll take this grid and I can transform it in different ways. Here's an isometric shot I want. I'll just take the grid and I'll tweak it like that. And I have an isometric down shot. And then I could draw the characters on top of that and have an idea of the perspective. Another way you can take it is, I like this, it's just so quick. You use the perspective transform tool and you suddenly have a real quick ground plane that looks solid. That took no time at all to make. And you want to figure out where the vanishing point is and then tweak it based on that. But you don't have to show that information. You have a quick grid. I'll also use this for a sky as well. It's ugly, it's there in the board, but the audience is never going to see it. So they do have a fantastic grid tool, which I could show you all, but I'm just going to be honest. I love it, but it's a little slow. This is just fast. So if you have something with really complicated perspective and you're like, oh, this is a key shot and I'll get a lot of use out of it, maybe use the grid tool, but I'd recommend this. Okay, soft brush grad. So if you want to keep a lot of your stuff vector and not bitmap layered in Storyboard Pro, the way I like to get gradients out of vector art is I use the soft brush. You can go into your brush selection, you can see it there, make it really big, then you draw it out, and then you have these soft blurry edges. And then from there, I'll cut into it, and then I'll have a nice grad that I can overlay onto the storyboard panel. And grads are great because they indicate light and they make your stuff look a little more sophisticated, and they're easy to add. It's pretty cheap time-wise. If I drew on top of that, it would make the board look a little bit more interesting. You can add dark to a lighter background, or you can add light effects to a dark background. So this soft brush technique is really powerful for making some cool looking boards. Here, this took 5 seconds the other day, but I have the lamp, I have the grad, I have the guy underneath, I have the perspective thing, and a dark tone background. Here's something from a personal board I did a few months ago. And, I have all this dynamic lighting, all these people on the rocks, they all have these cast shadows. And I knew if I used a grad and just kind of tweaked it and pulled it, it could make for some cool lighting. You can see that's all grad stuff. Behind here, it's all grad. If you want to give your stuff a little extra oomph, think about using the soft brush grad. Shift for hard objects. This one's kind of weird, but I find it really helpful. So if you have architecture, like almost 90% of your backgrounds is going to be some house. I like to hold down shift. You can see how quickly I can lay down these lines. And then for organic things like trees, greenery, shrubbery, whatever, I just use freehand and I'll like quickly board stuff because I don't know, it just looks good. Like that's my hands. It just looks good. Okay, so I use shift because if I were to draw this freehand, it would take longer and it looks perfectly fine. If I'm doing that, it just takes longer. My hands are a little wobbly. Maybe you have perfect lines. I don't. It takes longer. This straight looks good, and I did it a lot quicker. So try and use shift for that. Effects. So if you're doing like an explosion or something, or you want to think of shape design and effects, so you want to group some of these shapes, try using tone real quickly, and that can help group some of your effects. So think about that. Oh, I wanted to do a quick lightning tip. I love drawing lightning. Here's how I do it, and it's really fast and easy, and it looks good. So I'll take a fat brush. This is just a normal vector brush. Again, you want like random shape design, so I'm just going like really pushing down really hard and then really lightly. And then maybe I'll use a little different one. And then maybe I'll do a super thin one just for fun. And there's my lightning. Yeah, maybe I used a little too big of a brush to begin with, but now I'll take a soft brush and behind it, I'll put some kind of color fill because the lightning's so hot, the inner part could be white and then you put a glow around it and it just kind of makes it pop. It looks really good. And I'm not thinking of the lightning like lines. I'm thinking of it as a shape. And you'll find thinking in shapes can make stuff go a lot faster. If you're drawing that And then you're like, oh, and a little branch out. And that. It can, it takes a little bit longer. This took me no time and looks good. Lens flare, same thing. You can use soft brush and create a lens flare really easily. This is just, a soft brush on top of another soft brush. And then I took some gradient cuts into a soft brush and put those there. I looked up what a lens flare looks like on Google image search and just replicated it real quickly. And now I have a vector version of a lens flare that I can drop in on top of stuff, and it looks good. This should be an entire lecture shorthand, but there's not enough time alas. So I thought I'd show you what I expect from shorthand and what to do in boards. This is fine for a board. This has kind of all the information I need. I know where his chest middle line is. I kind of know where the perspective is. It's all proportionally accurate. I'm not worrying about all the details. So in the next shot, I cleaned it up a bit, but there's a lot of details here and stuff that you don't really need. Going in, adding all of these. Yes, add that. Maybe that's okay, but little furry bits. You're going through, like you can keep stuff rougher, because I'd rather have you spend time on the posing and doing a good, clear, constructive drawing than that. This is more on the job. If you're testing, maybe you want to add a little more polish to your cleanup. That's how to think about shorthand. Board style, to quickly go over this. Light background style, TV comedy. You see this all the time. It's great. It's perfectly fine. The background's gray. Some little tips you can do. You can use, if you select your layer that just has line, and you go to layer, generate automat, this will create a layer underneath that half fills out your line. I didn't do a great job with my cleanup there, so it kind of goes all over, but there we go. See, that was pretty quick. It does a lot of the fill-in work for you. I've made the foreground thing in soft focus to help add depth, put that guy in white to make him pop. He has a black line, so he's going to pop on that gray background. Study boards from artists you like, and you'll see this is pretty common. Tone style, this is pretty overkill. It's a bit more cinematic. You're adding gradients and lighting, and the background, instead of lines indicating a tree, I'm using a big gray shape, and this helps group objects, things like that. So it's a bit more extra work, but I think to make stuff more cinematic, adding some tone can help. For this, I think of the shapes first, and I kind of like that because I don't get mirrored down in the details where I'm drawing, like the ooh and the knot of the tree, and oh, it goes up here and here's a bunch of leaves. Like I don't have to draw all that stuff. It takes forever. Here I'm just doing big shapes. I'm doing swoops, and then I'll do a bucket fill. Something to try out for your boards. If you're finding that you're getting mirrored down in the details, think of the big shapes first. This is pretty common. I'm not great at it, but I don't know what to call it. Tron style. You see it in action shows a lot, like Voltron or Korra or whatever. It's all about the strong posing and perspective. Usually you'll have really clear grid lines, and they use the shift line a lot to draw out the background. And it's just about the character acting on this strong perspective. And they'll fill it with yellow or bright colors. And the reason they do that isn't for an aesthetic reason, it's for a practical reason where if two characters are fighting, you can easily track them that way. So if you have a fight scene on your board example and it's hard to track who's who, use a yellow, like a color like that, and you can easily track it. It's about clarity. Real quick tip, how to scale up correctly in Storyboard Pro. So I have this dog, he walks forward. That looks good. He's walking forward. The way I did that is I'd take this panel, I duplicate it, then I grab the dog, this little anchor point on the artwork, I put it over, oh my gosh, that is light, but I think that's the vanishing point. And from there, I'd scale up. And then I duplicate it again, grab the artwork again, I put it on the vanishing point, I'd scale up again. And then you have perspective that works for characters walking in a scene. It's a lot quicker and a lot more accurate than just eyeballing it, where you're like, I think maybe there. And then he in the next panel, he'd be down here. So try that, it's much quicker. This was a thing I did for the AMA the other day. Just how I approach a scene, this comes from me being an animator. I lay down the grid, I think of the stage. This was from that short project I did for fun. I have to make sure the character is standing on it correctly, and then I add just a bunch of acting. I'll just make sure that I have a really clear grid, and then he's jumping around acting on it. You can see from what I did from the AMA the other day, which is super duper rough, but this character is jumping forward, I laid down the grid, and then I just started kind of animating on top of it. And the way I did that was I had one panel, one shot, and I drew it out on this one panel. I just go through layer by layer, and I'd add a new layer and draw it out like this. And then from there, I duplicated the shot a lot, and I just delete the frames I didn't want. Like, that's the first frame, okay. Duplicate it, that's the next frame. Not fun to watch, but that's a good way to approach this stuff, especially if you have animator brain, which I have. Cool, and that kind of goes over my tips. So sorry, we have 1 minute for questions and answers.
We have one question from Madeline, who's asking, do you have any recommendations for exercises for storyboard artists to practice?
Sure. I think having a really simple scene could be a good thing to do, or a really simple action moment. Like, I think the thing I pitched the other day at the AMA is like, I'm at my desk here and there's an incredible sandwich to my left and I really want to eat it. Like, how can I eat it am I doing this? Like during what's a kind of a fun physical thing I can do, like a simple problem to solve. I think doing film studies is a great thing to do. Like watch an awesome movie. How did they do that, and study it and just do some film studies. That's a great exercise.
You mentioned earlier when you're looking at portfolios, you don't really want to see someone's epic. Andrew says that a lot of his ideas are for full length or pilot episodes. How can he shorten down his ideas for a portfolio?
If you're trying to sell an idea for a show, it's tough without having industry experience and not knowing the people in the room. Your idea just has to be the most brilliant thing ever. And if you don't have that experience, it probably won't be ready for the networks to be able to digest it. So I think your first goal should be trying to get your foot in the door. So I wouldn't do that epic. Maybe take a brief scene or moment from it, something that can stand alone without any other context. If it's like Dune and they're off to fight the sandworm or whatever, maybe it's a moment where they're riding the sandworm and trying to ride on it. It's like a brief little action moment that could stand on its own. And you want to keep it to 100 to 200 panels. You want to keep it short. The epics are a trap. They're a total trap because you'll spend so much time on it. You'll want it to be perfect. You should spend your storyboarding time on stuff you don't care about. Get good and then work on the stuff that you're passionate about. By the time you finish that first project, you'll be better and better, and then you'll be ready for the epic.
Awesome. Well, we're 2 minutes over, so I think it might be time to wrap up. Is there anything else you wanted to say, anything you wanted to plug or advice you wanted to give before we head out?
Well, just be sure that you all get a copy of my storyboard manual. Just a quick note, like I just sold it to Big Mouth and they're using it as a storyboard learning device for their board artists. And just like a good rule of thumb and guide, I'm probably going to be putting it out on Gumroad sometime in the future. So if you want a physical copy, hopefully I'll be able to provide that there. Make sure you get a copy. If something goes haywire and you aren't, you can DM me through Instagram, and I'll try and get back to you, and I can send you a copy. If you have questions about the resources or any questions at all, really feel free to reach out to me. I'll try and return your message. It might be quick, but I want to try and help you. And that's part of why I'm inspired to do this, is because I struggled. I made every mistake in the book and starting my career. So I want to, if I can save someone in here a year, I'd love to do that. I'd love to help you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everybody in the chat for coming to watch.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Someone in the chat mentioned that out of all of the seminars that they've been to or the lectures they've been to, this has been the one that's been the most helpful for them.
Oh, great. Cool. Yeah, it's a lot of information. I'm like, woo, I gotta take a shower after this, man. I'm like, there's a lot. So I hope you're all able to digest it. Catch you all later. Thank you again.